Thanks for being here. I'll be moderating a panel today on the impact of cryptocurrency and blockchain on society and the practice of law, which is a big topic, but we have some great panelists and it's going to be a lively discussion. So just so you know my background, I'm a payments regulatory lawyer, which means I advise on the broad range of regulations that cover payment products that you use every day. So think payment apps, bank accounts, card products, and also crypto exchanges. And crypto actually entered my world more than a decade ago in 2013 in the form of anti-money laundering regulations in the payment space at the federal level first and then the state level. So even though, crypto has been hotter in the last decade, some of us have been dealing with it for even longer. But before we get into more, just to kind of set the foundation of the discussion, we're going to start by defining some terms so everybody knows what we're talking about. But before that, I'm going to ask the panelists to intro themselves.
Happy to start. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Smith. I'm a partner at WilmerHale, where I lead the crypto and blockchain practice. My background is securities regulation, so think of the laws that regulate companies like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Robinhood. That's what my background is, and I've been practicing in the crypto space going on for 9 years. I represent very large crypto companies as well as traditional companies that are getting into crypto. So excited to talk about all of the opportunities and all of the very interesting and novel things I'm doing in the space.
I'm Lawrence Cosby, Hustle Class 2008, Section 2. I am at JP Morgan Chase. I am part of the technology and IP law group. I focus mainly on our patent portfolio. So I manage our global patent portfolio, cybersecurity, blockchain, quantum computing, and everything else behind the technology, behind banking. Former patent examiner, love technology, and yeah, I'm here to share my knowledge.
Good morning. Is it morning? It's still morning. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Frederick Scott. I am the CEO of the Scott Family Office. So that's a single family office company that manages our family assets. Let's see. I've been in institutional finance for 2 decades now. So IPOs, LBOs, M&A, structured finance, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. I've been a software developer since I was 7. I wrote my first piece of software at 7, so 30 years now. I'm 41. I know I don't look it, but I'm 41. I have an MBA. I'm also in the last semester of my LLM, second year of my doctorate. So that's kind of me. I've been invested in Bitcoin since really 2011, but I made a substantive investment in 2013 and held it all. Never thought it would go this far. And then we also built HBCU coin, but we'll talk about that on the panel.
Okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, to start us off, we are going to define some terms. So we actually have some slides. I think they should be. Okay. I guess we could have the panelists start us off. So we just wanted to first define terms like, crypto, blockchain. I know we all hear them, but what do they also really mean? So we're going to get into that first. So I guess Tiffany, and then we have other terms like stablecoin, digital assets that we'll get into. So I guess Tiffany, can you Tiffany or Cosby, whoever wants to start us off.
All right. Miriam, great person. Can you tell me, Joaquin? Joaquin, I was close. Can you tell me what Joaquin said to you?
Oh, he told me everyone should come to Howard.
Oh, no, that's not exactly what he said. Exactly what he said. Howard is the best law school in the DMV. What we just saw was the blockchain. We saw, instead of a game of telephone, instead of him saying, okay, what it was, no, exactly what he said, everyone knows. So that is what the blockchain is. It is a transaction record that everyone knows. It's a distributed ledger. Everyone sees and knows there's transparency, there's immutability, there is security and accountability. So now we have everybody in your business. Everybody, and black people, what do we love? Receipts, receipts, receipts. And this is what the blockchain is. It's a receipt for everyone to see what did you transaction, what you paid, what you did, and how that moves. And so that is the basic of the blockchain. Why do we trust it? Because everybody knows what's going on. So there's no secrecy and the like. And I'm going to pass it to Tiffany to understand what crypto is part of that blockchain. Did I say something wrong, Frederick?
No, I just want to piggyback on that.
Okay, you can piggyback.
There's one key part that I think he left off, which is the blockchain is also immutable. And what I mean by that is, So with blockchain, because it's a distributed ledger, right? It's decentralized. There are hundreds of thousands of computers mining and tracking the ledgers, right? And so someone can't just hack in to the ledger and change blocks or change transactions and make something what it wasn't, because if one computer changes it, all the other computers now have to confirm it, and it won't confirm. And so as a result of that, that won't be accepted. So blockchain can be looked at as an immutable, transparent, accountable, and highly visible to anyone that wants to look it up ledger of transactions, operations, practices, whatever you've put on that blockchain via your smart contract
And crypto.
in crypto.
Yeah, so the blockchain is like the ledger on which it's part of crypto but separate from crypto, right? So when you think of crypto, like get really technical, cryptography is like just the practice of securely encoding information. But when you hear crypto, you typically think of things like Bitcoin, Ether, Solana. But it's important to make this distinction because there's separate use cases for blockchain because of all of the features that were just discussed that is separate from crypto. And right now what we're seeing is different industries, whether it's transportation, medical records. Think about anything where having a record that is immutable is important and having transparency is important. That's the use case there. So I make that distinction because sometimes people kind of forget that, right? But they're two separate things. With respect to crypto, what makes that, the other thing about the blockchain is that instead of there being a particular person or entity responsible for confirming transactions, it's done via a process called a consensus mechanism. Like, right, where all of the actors pursuant to some rules agree a transaction is valid. And you basically replace an intermediary with these rules, right? And the people who apply these rules are all dispersed. That's what when we say like disintermediated or decentralized. And like, why is that important? It's important because we're essentially replacing intermediaries with code. And so when people talk about decentralized finance and you see all of these fights about like whether or not this technology is going to replace like banks, broker dealers, or other intermediaries, like that's what they're really like referring to. And yes, it seems scary, but it's also, if you think about it from the prospect of, even when they were talking about it from an AI perspective, like because people are known to have biases and discriminate, certain people are more comfortable transacting with the code that has transparent rules as opposed to dealing with an intermediary. So that's like kind of the blockchain crypto like relationship. And then even with crypto, so you have like the cryptocurrencies and you have the ones that are really just, you know, like Bitcoin is kind of the OG. It's really thought of as a store of value and it's kind of just there. You can't really do anything with it. But then you have Ethereum, Solana, other types of assets that have smart contract probability with them so that you can train them and actually do things. So it's like programmable money. And those are used for real world applications like securities transactions and other things. Even when people say crypto, it's not all the same, like, right? So there's the Bitcoins of the world. They're the other types of assets that have smart contracts that have real world use cases. And then there's a category of just like novelty, fun, just, I'll leave it with fun. And those are like meme coins or collectibles, like, right? Mm-hmm. So like it's important to kind of know which bucket we're talking about because they're not all the same. And then another type of crypto which actually has, you know, use and stability is called a stable coin. Stable coins are crypto assets which are pegged to something that's fixed. So one example is a stable coin pegged to the US dollar. We actually have federal legislation, which we're going to talk about later, for these types of assets. And you're now seeing a lot of institutions using stable coins because you can transact in and out of different currencies very quickly and cheaper and cross borders using stable coins. So again, a third part of cryptocurrency that actually has a lot of adoption and use. And then the third bucket is like tokenized securities. And so you can use a blockchain to be able to, instead of settling a transaction, if you buy Google, you buy it today, but you receive it tomorrow. With the blockchain, you can buy it with a stable coin and actually get it immediately. right? So there's all of these like new types of finance, and we're really thinking about how we like buy and sell, how we buy and sell securities or other types of transactions because of using the blockchain. Then there's like, stable coins are privately issued digital forms of money, but you also have CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. Other countries like China, they have them. The U.S. has essentially decided to ban CBDCs here because there's a lot of privacy concerns because of what we're talking about, the ledger. So like here in the U.S., we think about privacy like very importantly. But if you have this ledger that shows that you spent, I don't know, $100 at Wingstop, and you're telling everyone that you're on a diet, like, right? You might not want everyone to see that, like, right? Or even sometimes from like you might support right now in this post-DEI environment, maybe you really support a cause. You don't want everyone to know that you gave $1,000 to a cause. And so if you have the entire transaction shown to everyone on the blockchain, you might not want that, like, right? So those are I think the key terms when it comes to crypto, but like it's important to kind of have that foundation because in my experience, I see a lot of people using those terms like interchangeably, but you really mean different things because sometimes you're talking about meme coins, which are just for fun, right, versus stable coins, which have real world value and use cases. A lot of institutions are using them.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that sounds like a conversation I was having with a friend it was an amalgamation of like what government could do and what people could do with currencies. So I think it's good to have that foundation. And we'll also have the slides after so if you want to take a look at them. So I know we've touched on this a little bit already, but can you all talk a little bit more about some use cases? I know, Frederick, you mentioned a coin of your HBCU coin. Maybe we'll start there with that use case and then.
Sure. So, I'm going to be try to be as tactful as I can so my marketing department doesn't kill me later. But, when you look at the political climate today, right, there's been a lot of rollback of DE&I, what they call DE&I, and they want all this merit-based stuff, right? And so you're seeing a lot of businesses in our community that are suffering as a result of that, right? A lot of organizations that are suffering as a result of that. HBCUs are suffering as a result of that, right? So one of our wholly owned portfolio companies is a strategic partner with the White House Initiative on HBCUs. And so we've been working with them now for about 2 years. Upon following everything that was going on, I got frustrated because this is what I do. I get frustrated. When I don't like things, it's funny, I called Lawrence. It was like, okay, this is what we're doing because I don't like it anymore. And so what I decided to do was build what's called HBCU coin. So it's an ERC20 token. So it's built on the Ethereum framework, and we're going to talk about that. So it's a utility token, right? And so what it does is it'll allow our community to perpetually fund HBCUs into the future in a transparent, accountable, and viable way, right? So, and in a way that benefits those that are supporting HBCUs. Typically, when you see alumni networks and supporters of HBCUs donating, they donate one time, that money goes where it goes, and, there's impact, but next year the HBCU will be back to ask for more money. And so what happens is, in our community, we don't have the disposable income savings like other demographics have, right? And so we experience and embark and achieve donor fatigue a lot faster than other demographics, right? And so that's why you see from a donor standpoint with HBCUs that donations are starting to trend down, especially in this economic environment. Well, a coin like HBCU coin allows the community to participate in a meaningful way, in a much more cost-effective way, but by participating, right, they not only fund the HBCU, but they're also funding themselves because as the price of that token goes up, that benefits them directly. So everybody has a chance to benefit, and everybody can see the impact being made, the amount of money that's going to the HBCUs, etc., right through the ledger. So nobody has to, it's not a, hey, we're going to do this and just trust me, it's all going to work out. No, it's all validatable on the blockchain, and that's what makes this so great. I think our community could benefit a lot from using blockchain technology in a number of things that we do that would give us much more viability and many more opportunities to expand our income generating and wealth building capability.
Okay, that's great. Any student bank with Chase? Okay. All right. You know what? You guys helped me early. I got prizes for you. Have you heard of the ACN, ACH, automated clearinghouse, bank to bank transfers? These are things that we don't really talk about. You don't really have to talk about because you just want to get paid. So, this is what the bank does. And a lot of times they don't have 24/7. You go Cash App, it says, hey, you can get your money next Tuesday, but you can't get it today. ACH had an issue on Tuesday, shut it down. People were like, where's my money? If they were using something like Connexus, JP Morgan's blockchain, crypto, that goes bank to bank transfers, available 24/7. It's formerly called Onyx, beautiful name. They had to change it for some reasons. But it allows cross-border and transfers, which some U.S. Things happen. There's some countries that say, hey, like, I don't want your money. I can't take your cash. But if we transfer it to the blockchain, bank-to-bank transfers, we'll be able to do some conversions. So blockchain deposit accounts enable instantaneous 24/7, 365 transfers. Weekends, holidays, you can manage liquidity. You can bypass traditional cutoff times, etc. So this is the way we might not see actual uses of cryptocurrency, but it's being used behind the scenes. It's able for us to get our money wherever we are. If I'm in the Philippines and I'm trying to pay somebody in the United States, but there's some cutoff times. If I'm using blockchain deposit accounts, we'll be able to transfer that money. So you may never see JP Morgan's Connexus system, but just know your money may be moving through that way.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit more too about how that practically works? Because I know for me, like getting involved in just like tokenized deposits and that sort of thing, like it was always helpful to like have a visual, like a better understanding of like how that works.
Let's say you ever had pennies? I know. I mean, we're getting away from coins. So if I'm gonna pay you in 1,000 pennies, it's gonna be heavy. What if I had a single thing, one big penny, and I can just hand it to you? This is the way in which banks can transfer large amounts of cash and large amounts of information, honestly, in small tokenized requests. This is, it's a way for them to leverage both the security of the systems, but also the speed of the systems. So yeah.
Any other use cases that anyone wants to highlight?
I mean, I'll provide like a global example. So, in the U.S., we have, fairly stable currency. We kind of take it for granted. But like in other countries, like it could be that you deposit $100 in the bank and the value like substantially decreases like overnight. Yeah. And so in other countries, having access to the U.S. dollar is like very critical. And the whole process of, if you've ever traveled like internationally, like, right, the process of getting the local currency is both like expensive. You have to go to a bank, go to the machine. It's like a kind of a cumbersome process. But with stable coins, like, right, you can access the US dollar from anywhere in the world in a matter of minutes just on your phone. You don't have to go to a bank. You have to worry about a bank being open or a Western Union or another type of company being open. You can actually do it on your phone. And it's interesting. It's actually becoming a political issue because I was actually in Davos a couple of, last month at this big world forum. And where in the U.S. we're excited about the stable coins and the legislation we have for them, other countries are like, wow, like the U.S. is basically dollar colonizing the world with stable coins. And so it's becoming like this political issue. And earlier this week, I was at the Milken event talking about the same exact thing, right? So like, I think there's obviously like the use cases, but there's also kind of political issue. And anytime you're talking about money, it becomes very political. But I think you should just kind of think about this as a global currency with global implications and potential, which also creates like a lot of like opportunities for it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, that it does eliminate a lot of barriers. Now, there's still hurdles because this stuff has to be regulated. So, Tiffany, you've already started talking about that. Yeah. But can we talk some about, how crypto has and has not been regulated, first in the U.S.? Yeah. So first, kind of like we'll go into like the general landscape. Yep. And then, let's start there.
Yeah. So when you hear people say that crypto isn't regulated, what they're saying is that there is no federal regulator at this time for the purchases and sales of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ether, and Solana. And so it's actually been regulated at the state level as a money transmission business. Money transmission laws are like historically like the Western unions of the world. And so as you think about it, like Western unions versus like digital money, digital coins, totally different. And so there are certain states like New York and now California that have like crypto specific laws, but most states do not. And so there was an effort to get crypto regulated at the federal level. And it's been, various folks have been trying for years now. And where we're at is we have legislation for stable coins, which I talked about earlier. It's called the Genius Act, and we're actually in the process of implementing that legislation for cryptocurrencies. As a general matter, we do not yet have federal legislation. It passed the House last year, and right now it's passed out of one committee in the Senate, but it's being debated by the Senate Banking Committee. And if you guys follow this closely, you know that President Trump said just on Monday that having crypto legislation was a top priority. And so we'll see if that happens, but the thing to think about is when people say it's not regulated, it sort of is, but you don't have a fit for purpose regulatory structure, and that's what this federal legislation is trying to do. And that's really just like the Bitcoin, Ether, and Solana. If something is a stable coin, talked about it, it's going to be regulated under the Genius Act. Or if something is like traded on the blockchain, but it's a security or a commodity future, it is already regulated. So that's why it's important to know what you're talking about and know which bucket in which like the particular asset fits.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And as I alluded to in the payment space, and Tiffany addressed too at like the state level with money transmitters, and also FinCEN at the Department of Treasury, it really is regulated when it's used as like a medium of exchange or like a store of value. So when you're using it like money, but also, Tiffany's addressing like there's other areas like securities. And so Tiffany, to that point, at least I know you can correct me, this is more your space than mine, but I know there have been a lot of discussion about which federal regulator would be like the primary regulator. Yep. And there had been kind of a tussle between the SEC. SEC is bigger, the Securities Exchange Commission, and the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And I know there's been some developments where they're kind of working together. Mm-hmm. So can you talk, I think you've kind of addressed it already, but sort of talk about, to that point about having it be like directly like regulated, like how you think that's gonna shape out under the Trump administration?
Yeah, so right now, the way that the federal legislation is drafted, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission would have primary jurisdiction over crypto assets that are considered commodities. And as we're kind of sort of alluded to, commodities as opposed to securities, like when you have a security, you know who the issuer is, like, right? Like this is Google, and I'm looking at Google to provide disclosures about said security because we have this disclosure regime. When you have a commodity, it's think of gold or something that's huge where it's not one person or group of persons that has control over the market. So everything that you need to know is really already embedded. About the price of it's already embedded in the market and like freely available. And so the thought is that once you have a crypto asset that gets to the point of being decentralized, meaning not under the control of a person or group, it is a commodity. It's more like gold, and therefore it should be regulated like other types of commodities and be under the jurisdiction of the CFTC. If you've been following the space closely, you know that when you first launch a coin, it has to be launched by someone, unless you're like Bitcoin and you're like anonymous, like Satoshi, like, right? But like most of the time, it's like, we talked about Ethereum, like Vitalik and a group of people, they launched Ethereum. And when you do that, you're an identifiable person or group of persons. And at the time of launch, like you have more information than the people you're selling to. There's an information asymmetry, like, right? Like you guys know what your plan is. You guys have all the power. You guys are making all the decisions. So under our federal securities laws, we say when there's information asymmetry, you're giving someone money and then in return they're promising to do certain things, that is a security. And so there's going to be guidelines about making like the transformation from when you first launch a coin and you are a security to when you get to the point of being, everything is in the market and you're therefore a commodity. So that's like a lot of the debated language within the bill. And as I mentioned, it's, kind of sitting with Senate banking, but like it's going to be like part jurisdiction with the SEC, but the primary jurisdiction and going forward is going to be with the CFTC. I think there's a question.
In regards to just the distinction between commodity and securities, from what I'm understanding, it's mainly whether it's unified and if there's like a return of like promise. Are there any like recent cases that you can think of, like salient cases that can really like assist with kind of understanding that differentiation?
Well, I mean, like the most salient case is Howey, right? Which is like the investment contract case, which has been used to determine when something is a security. So think of it this way: the definition of commodity is very broad, right? And it does include securities, like, right? And so if something is a security, it's kind of carved out. So you use the Howey case from the 60s about arms growth to determine if something is a security. If it's not a security, then it's a commodity. Right, and I don't want to get into this, but there's been like recent cases where there's been attempts to call various crypto assets, even stablecoin securities, and with the change of administration, those cases have been dropped, right? So there have been recent cases, but it's very political. They've all been dropped, right? So I go back to the Howey test, like, right, and even there's some people don't want to use the Howey test for crypto because it's meant to be a catch-all test, but there's some elements of that in the legislation because like that's how because the starting point is this a security? If no, then it's a commodity.
Okay, I think looks like there's another question.
I just want to thank you all for being here. My name is John Fadubabe, and I serve as a legislative analyst for an elected official in New York State who is the chair of the Banks Committee in New York State, and he is very largely into fintech space and has proposed several bills on the state level regulating the crypto space. And my question kind of echoes off what we were mentioning, what Tiffany was mentioning earlier, when it comes to regulating crypto on the state level. My question is how do we ensure consumer protection and safety when a industry like crypto isn't federally regulated? And I guess more specifically when it comes to like crime, we know that obviously there's been many examples of kind of elderly being defrauded with crypto and maybe not being aware of kind of how it operates. Kind of what kind of conversations are we having when it comes to protecting those who might not be aware of the current framework when it comes to addressing these crimes? What kind of conversation should we be having on the state level or on the federal level when it comes to oversight and when it comes to making sure that consumers' rights are protected as well?
So that's part of the biggest problem right now, right? Especially in the current administration. The SEC issued basically guidance, essentially stating that a utility token is not a security, right? Well, not in their purview, right? The challenge with that is that from my view, and when I look at contracts, I actually build these contracts, right? And having and understanding the Security and Exchange Act of 1933, technically, any blockchain contract you write where someone is going to buy something that has potential value, right, and hold that for potential value regardless of whether the underlying asset has utility or not, or the underlying contract has utility or not. Technically, under the Security and Exchange Act of 1933, as I've interpreted it, is a security, right? But the challenge that we have is that it's really coming down to political will, political sentiment at this point, right, and who wants to do what when. The Biden-Harris administration was much more aggressive in crypto legislation and blockchain legislation, whereby the Trump administration has taken a 180 on that, right?
I mean enforcement, not regulation. Not
legislation, yeah, enforcement, right? And classifying a much more broader spectrum of crypto projects as securities, whereby the Trump administration has very much done a 180 and is basically like kind of hands off with it. So it really comes down to political will and sentiment. And I live in the state of New York, right? So it comes down, I live in the city. It comes down to what your legislature, where their appetite is for regulation in the state, and then understanding that regulating in the state doesn't have much weight at the federal level. So protecting consumers really comes down to enforcement ability at your enforcement level.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, can I just wrap this up really quick? So like, as I mentioned, crypto is not regulated at the state, at the federal level. It is regulated at the state. New York has the BIT license, like, right? So right now, I'd say it's up to the states to have consumer protection mechanisms in place. The BIT license, if you think about a lot of crypto products, a lot of them are not accessible to New York residents because of the heavy consumer protection element, right? So that is today. Today, it's only the states. Once you get to federal legislation, which is not yet has not yet been passed, it's going to be during the rulemaking process. Like, right, so the way it works is you pass, Congress passes a law, president signs it into law, right, and then there's a process by which the agencies, the CFTC and SEC, have to implement that law. So it's going to be during that process where you're going to start to like really carve out the details about consumer protection, right? But right now, we haven't gotten there yet. So right now, it's just what you have at the state level, and it's up to the states to make laws. But once we have federal legislation, it's going to be preempted from at the state level, right? So it's like important to kind of follow like where you are in this moment and whether that legislation actually passes.
Yeah, definitely is still under development. So yeah, we'll take more questions toward the end. But is there anything anyone wants to say about kind of like the international landscape? I know that there's like no clear, I mean, similar to even securities and like payments today, there's no clear international regulation. But are there any like bits and pieces that we can talk about?
So I'm actually so there's efforts. So like, you know, the G20, all the world leaders, there's actually a G20 working group where a group of us are putting together recommendations for the G20 leaders on how you should have like standards internationally, because crypto, unlike other assets, is international. So you want to make sure that, you know, whatever the U.S. is doing is kind of consistent with what they're doing in the EU. So those efforts are ongoing. Like you kind of alluded to it, but like in the U.S. we don't have federal legislation, as talked about a number of times, but there are other jurisdictions like the EU that do. And so because crypto, unlike securities, you're able to transact globally in a matter of seconds, we're going to get from this place where you can't just have like disparate laws in different countries. And so there are these harmonization, mutual recognition types of efforts. We haven't really had to do this before, like, right? So unclear how it's going to work, but there's like a lot of organizations and people thinking about how to kind of make this work so that you can kind of protect consumers and you have some comfort that if you're offering, or if you're a tech developer, you're creating something here in the US, it's going to meet standards to be able to be sold in the EU. And the same thing with consumer protections. Like, right, we have all of these, especially in the US, we have very strong anti-money laundering and sanctions controls. We want to make sure that like you're not like via using the blockchain enabling terrorist financing. So there's groups that try to come together and have some harmonization or agreement about the standards that should apply to crypto assets.
Yeah, thanks, Via, for the great questions and for the response. So this conversation with the questions has gotten some into sort of the next question, which is what's crypto's fit within existing legal disciplines? We've sort of been talking about it. Like, as I mentioned, I'm a payments lawyer, so that's how I got involved in some aspects of crypto. We've talked about securities. But so for a law student or someone wanting to get into crypto and be a crypto lawyer, like, what are the different like disciplines or areas where they can get into crypto?
I think that this is part of the technology divide, the digital divide. So you need to be aware of it. Anybody know what a contract is? I think everybody should. What about a smart contract? Okay. It is still a contract. It is an agreement, but this one is self-executing by on the blockchain. So you could write a property contract that will transfer based on, you know, whether the fee simple, et cetera, on that blockchain. And what it allows you to have that immutability, again, that's a great word, that security and transparency. So everything that we do, whether it's a digital chain of custody, is the same as a paper chain of custody. So now you're able to use this technology that you can't lie. And I think that is something that will be used, you know, eventually. Contracts and the smart contracts, whether it's real property or intellectual property. I'm an intellectual property lawyer. There are ways in which you can have ownership rights. You can have you can combat counterfeiting. You can license property through smart contracts. I know NFTs, they had their run, and I was a big NFT guy, but not because of what people did with it, but because of the technology behind it. Imagine, I'm a music artist and I have all this music, and I drop an album and that sells, but I have like these outtakes and I have other music. What can I do with it? I can put it on the blockchain. I could actually, sell it to people as an NFT. They can own part of my catalog or the like. And what's great about it is that anytime that item, that trinket, that collector's item is transferred, I can still get paid, because in that smart contract it says, hey, I get a percentage of this sale. So every time it's sold, I can get it. My kids can get it. My grandkids can get it. And what it can do is it can kind of surpass the IP laws that we have. Your copyrights, trademarks, patents all have, for the most part, limitations. Copyright is life plus 70. If I have a smart contract, it can be forever in perpetuity as long as the world doesn't end. And computers are still viable and the internet is still up. We'll still be able to be on the chain, and you'll still be able to get that new Sexy Red with Key Glock song, which is a great song. But yeah, I think that, also with IP, there is still, mail service rules. It still takes time for me to file something. I put it on the blockchain, it's instantaneous. It's right there. The day that I invented this is on the blockchain. The day that I wrote this book is on the blockchain. So it allows to have that contract, that security, that accountability, that immutability in anything we do. As lawyers, we know the meeting of the minds and mutual assent is so important. Now we have digital records of all of that. Service, I need to serve somebody some papers, put it on the blockchain, they can't lie, because it's right there, everybody sees it. So it's receipts, receipts, receipts. And the ability to, even at law firms, to get paid, based on the blockchain, where the money will be dispersed. If I have, an account that is supposed to pay out, if I put it on the blockchain, a retainer, you can put that on the blockchain. It says, hey, my transaction happens, I do this, I file this, I can pull money from there based on that smart contract, automatically pulling it from it. So,
How many people are familiar with NIL? Name, image, and likeness. This is a big conversation right now. And it's become a disaster because schools keep outbidding themselves, and the price of NIL goes up more and more and more and more every year, right? And even though there have been now what I would call NIL caps, right? Schools and third parties are figuring out ways to go around that. If that was on the blockchain, that wouldn't be possible, right? The cap is the cap. The rules are the rules. The player is the player, right? Once the cap is hit, blockchain knows that player is now blocked from doing anything else. We can regulate the market. We can regulate product pricing that way. I'm sorry, I shouldn't call athletes products, but it's essentially from a logical standpoint, when I'm thinking about it from a coding standpoint, it's a product, right? Like any other product, it's just interchangeable. So if I put the product on there and it's on the blockchain now and it's transparent and I've written the right contract rules to operate that situation, and what's going to happen is NIL is now managed properly. Schools are able to have more predictability in their players. There's the teams that they're going to be fielding. Players are not as easily able to move, and we get better control of things. Blockchain has tons of uses.
Okay, yeah, great. I think that's great. So are there any, I know we've talked about a few areas like IP, payment, securities, even a little bit of litigation. So I think, would you all say that it's fair to say that almost any area you get into, there will be some kind of crypto hook, maybe some more than others, or?
Wills Trust in the States, that's another one. Tax law, eventually.
Now tax is huge.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Huge.
Yeah. With I guess crypto with property, with IRS regulation.
Yeah, we don't have a tax law yet. Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I love talking about this. If you are interested in crypto broadly defined, or you trade it, harness that interest into a discipline that's related to crypto, because you'll have amazing opportunities. So yes, I know crypto litigators, but you're able to like, during the last administration when there was a lot of enforcement going on, like, I had first, second years writing briefs, amicus briefs, writing responses talking about the major questions doctrine or other like very highly constitutional topics. Like, right, we went to litigation for a crypto client. I had first and second years like in district court at the federal level in a room that's full because it was the first crypto case that was brought to court. Like, right. IP is super important. I'm trying to think of all the young folks on my teams that do different stuff, but like I'd say like because this is a very novel area where the laws are being developed, there's like tons of opportunities like to get involved. Like I've testified in front of Congress. I'm a nonpartisan expert. I go up to the Hill to give briefings to members. I bring some associates. I bring associates with me, like, right? And so if you're really interested in this, sort of like outliers, like where you're doing your 1,000 shots a day, like take time on your own, play with the technology, go on Etherscan and see the blockchain that Lawrence is referring to, like, right? You have a crypto wallet, put 20 bucks in there. I'll give you 20 bucks to play around with it, like, right? Just so that you can see like how interesting these. We're talking about being able to transfer a stable coin, like take a couple of bucks and do it, like, right? And then from there, like, I think the most like right now, like people call themselves crypto lawyers, and like the people who were general crypto lawyers with no background, like I've been in the game for 9 years. People who were there 9 years ago, I don't know where they're at. But the people who actually have sustainability, even my trajectory, is because I was a securities lawyer, and that's relevant. It's the banking lawyers, the commodities lawyers, right? The CFTC, as we mentioned, it's gonna have a bigger role when it comes to regulating crypto, and the CFTC bar essentially is actually very small because it's a small agency. So you know what a commodity is, but you're interested. There's a lot of opportunities there. I think we've touched. Like, is there any other big ones?
Real estate transactions.
Yeah, because you can
Because you can put your money in escrow on the blockchain, and once the party fulfills all of its obligations, automatically that money is released. There's no negotiation, there's no conversation, there's no anything. It's autonomously, automatically done, right? So transferring title can be done on the blockchain, right? So all of these different things there, I mean, from healthcare to even, and healthcare, that blockchain is being used in healthcare now, right? And so, especially with the advancements of AI and AI technology, right? Coupling the two pieces together, which is something that we've been able to do in our firm, it's amazing. It's amazing what we're able to do, and the level of transparency that we have, the level of visibility that we have, and the ability to be able to manage our transactions and outcomes much more clearly and predictably from a revenue standpoint. Brilliant.
Anything that has offer acceptance consideration, anything that needs a paper trail, the blockchain can be the answer for that. So you should know it, because you one day wake up and be like, wait a minute, I'm in healthcare, I'm doing litigation. Oh, the blockchain is the answer right there. Think about discovery. We may not have to go through all the things in discovery because we're just clicking one button and it's giving us all the record, all the trails. So anything you're doing, it's important to understand technology, because you're in the technology business now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think Tiffany alluded to this too about the novelty piece. Whenever things are novel, it can often be an opportunity in the legal profession because it means the field may not be as crowded. So definitely raise your hand. That's how I got into payments regulation, because I was like, I really want to do this. So I think also don't be afraid to, as you're looking at the technology, also speak up about your interests. So we want to get to the portion on the impact of crypto on society. So I'm going to ask the panelists about, how would you describe, just like broadly, the general impact that crypto has had in the general society, but also in the Black community and the broader African diaspora?
If you're a lawyer, you're either a social engineer or a parasite. Thank you. Crypto allows people to go from unbanked, debanked, and allows the decentralization and democratizing finance and closing wealth gap, potential disruption in a perfect world. However, in the Black community, it's been subject to predatory inclusion, which is scamming. It's preying on the black communities. You know, the lack of wealth and distrust of traditional financial instruments. Because of financial discrimination, exclusion, exploitation, redlining, predatory lending, banking while black. JP Morgan Chase is trying to solve all that through their various outreaches and the like. But no, it's tough. You know, you want to make money. You want to actually, do something that's new and jump on the bandwagon. But there's so many scams. So many people have lost so much money by putting into, this get rich quick dream. Cryptocurrency is real. People made a lot of money on it, but some people have lost everything. So it's important to have that knowledge and be able to, you're a lawyer. You'd be able to talk to your family, and they're saying like, hey, this new coin, I'm telling you, it's going to the moon. And you're like, hey, let's be a little grounded in that. Let's go ahead and not spend that rent money on it. But, we could spend that Taco Bell money. That's fine. Shouldn't be eating it anyway. But it's important that to be aware, to be knowledgeable, and to, play with the system within your means. Sometimes take a long shot, but really make sure that it's a sure shot, and you never know.
So I will say that this portion of my statement is going to be for informational purposes only, and this is not an offer to encourage you to buy, solicit, or sell securities. I need to make that disclosure. With that, blockchain has the ability, if we adopt it and learn about it, right? So first of all is education. Mm-hmm. So the number one rule, and I tell everybody this, don't invest in anything you don't understand. Don't engage in stuff. Learn first, right? And then you're able to properly assess opportunity, right? So that's number one. But with blockchain has the ability to create new avenues of viability and sustainability, growth, and wealth creation in our community if we actively engage in the usage of blockchain and apply it properly to different social issues, financial issues that we have in the community, right? So, for example, because of the regulatory environment being what it is in the Trump administration's and the Trump administration's position on that, right? It created an opportunity, given what I know that's going on with HBCUs and what's going on with the administration towards HBCUs, to develop a solution that's going to benefit HBCUs, benefit our community, right? But the reason why that's possible is because I'm educated on the concept, number one. I know how to build smart contracts, number two. And number three, I'm positioned to be able to bring something like this to the market from a financial standpoint and relationship standpoint. So that's really, really important, right? But if more of us get involved in the blockchain discussion, learning and educating about blockchain, I mean, God, we have some really brilliant people in our community. The things that we could create that would create sustainability and viability from our community are just, I mean, they're unimaginable. Sky's the limit, really, honestly.
I'm just going to disentangle, because I agree with all of that, like blockchain use cases versus actual cryptocurrency, like investing or purchasing, right? And so, like on the latter, I'll say this is also very near and dear to my heart. And so when it comes to purchasing crypto, like I'm talking about the Solanas, the Bitcoins, the Ethers, and all of the meme coins, all of those things, like that type of trading, what happened was that unlike securities, like right in those like regulated environments, the barriers to entry were really low. And I think both like the barriers being low and the understanding that it was decentralized, therefore not controlled by an intermediary who I think some people think, have the tend to discriminate, was very attractive, particularly to our people. And what happened was you had access, but you didn't have the education point. And so people they didn't understand the concept of diversification, like, right? Yeah. And what you're talking about, use your Taco Bell money, not your rent money. And so you had a lot of people that like were harmed, right? Or even when there was these types of products that say, hey, earn all of this yield, this like savings like account where you earn all of this yield, not understanding that yield was generated by the company making super risky bets, right? We had all of these, like I'm not going to mention names because of conflicts, but like all of these companies that went bankrupt, right? So I make that point because like I think when it comes to like putting aside blockchain, when it comes to actual crypto, like, yes, there is all of these like potential to actually have access, but the education wasn't there, and so I think a lot of people got hurt. People did. There are some of the, there was like the, what's it, the black, the million.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
like, there's like people who did make money, but you also hear these stories, and so the legislation, the House bill has like, and Senator Booker led this effort, like it has some language that talks about investor education being part of like the legislation, so that's going to be implemented, and hopefully like the bill has to like, you know, be finalized, go through reconciliation. I hope that it's still there, but I think once we actually get to the point of having education and access, we really do have the ability, like on the like investing side, we actually do have the ability to make some strides, but we haven't necessarily gotten there because of all of these elements that I just described. So it's something kind of important to keep in mind, because it's like people say like, oh yeah, crypto, financial inclusion, and I'm like, nah, we have access, but inclusion means actually making people's lives better with that access, and we're just not there yet. And that's why it's important that, like, frankly, people who look like us are in the rooms that I'm in, right, making sure, and other things, and I'll talk about separately, we can talk about offline, like the other things that I do to make sure that like this industry and the education and everything develops so that we actually get to the full potential of it, and we're not just like saying things because they sound good.
Has anybody seen a Bitcoin ATM?
Well,
Where-
we know where they are.
Where are they?
In the liquor stores.
In the liquor stores. And what happens, people are like, oh, like I've heard about this. I might not have a laptop. I might not really know how to use my smartphone to invest, but I see this here. I can put some money into it. And that's okay. That's fine. Like, yes, you're in the cryptocurrency market. The problem is when you then go try to take that money out, and those fees, they're not regulated like a bank's fees. So I can hit you over the head for 45% of your investment because you're trying to get that money back. And so you're not going to be on Connecticut Avenue and see a Bitcoin ATM. You're going to see it in the liquor stores, the corner stores, etc. And it was really bad.
I think Charlie wants to know where to find an ATM.
Where you find?
Well, I know you said the liquor stores. I know how to find those. No, my question, Tiffany, listening to you speak is, because I know you in the room. You one of those that are in the room, and for y'all, she real humble, but she at the G20 with all of these country leaders and all of that stuff. In your opinion, you mentioned that you don't think we've reached the potential of how crypto can work in our lives and make it easier. And I'm aware of like how the Africans have used kind of technology to be able to transfer money when they don't have the traditional banks. But I'm curious, knowing that you are an innovator and leader, what would be crypto reaching its full potential in our community with the education and the access? What is it that you see it doing for us?
We would be launching our own utility tokens. We would be launching our own cryptocurrencies, like full-on cryptocurrencies, not just tokens, right? That have real utility, real store of value, right? That are doing real things for our community. So when people are investing in these things, there's an impact on something measurable in our community that's benefiting from that investment, right? To me, that is the highest and best use of blockchain and cryptocurrency in our community, right? People are going to school to learn how to write smart contracts, learn how to be a software developer. Law school students are going to law school to learn about cryptocurrency legislation, policies, procedures, practices, things of that nature, and bringing that information back to our community and going into organizations that are led by African American founders and CEOs, and bringing that wealth of knowledge, and we're coming together collectively to solve problems in our community ourselves. To me, that's the highest and best use of blockchain.
Yeah, so I have two concrete examples. Like, one is using blockchain to collectively go in and purchase assets that are important to our community, right? And so I have a summer home on in a historic, like, you know, African American community, like, right? And there was an issue at some point where some of the historic homes were being lost by like the third and fourth generation, right? And maybe that particular person didn't have the money for the taxes or to be able to keep up the home. As a community, using blockchain and fractional ownership, like, we can actually go in and purchase some of those historic homes or artifacts, like, right, number one. And the more, like, you know, just from a trading crypto coin perspective, not a blockchain perspective, it's just knowing how to invest, right? And so like Bitcoin today, it's at 70,000 because like there was an announcement about the legislation. But I actually, made a video like on my Instagram last week talking about like people are asking, is crypto dead because the price of Bitcoin went low, and I'm like, no, right? But if you know anything about investing, like you hold on, right? You just don't go in and out, like right when the prices are down. So I'm just like, okay, like Bitcoin a couple of years ago went under 10,000. I wish that I bought more, like right, but I bought in at like. I don't remember like the prices that I bought, but the point is, if you understand like investing, it's a long-term game, right? You don't trade in and out of things, and so if you're going to invest like your rent money, you need that. That's not money you should be investing. Yeah. What you should be investing are things where you have a long-term horizon and you're able to withstand the market. So one is like the education component, like understanding what investing means. There's no such thing as a casino where you actually make money, where you always win. Like everyone knows that game. So it's just having that fundamental education about investing that some of us don't have because we never actually had the additional resources to invest. Right? And I think that's kind of part of the thing. So it's like the early Bitcoin investors, they saw it went from 0 to like at one point went to 130, now we're back at 70. But like if you stayed at the market the entire time, like that was transformational. And I know people who rode that, right? And but we just don't understand that. Most of us don't understand that because we don't have those skills or that knowledge because we're not used to being in the market.
I love the concept of fractional ownership. That is the power of the black dollar.
Yeah.
We're able to pull in. I mean, I've talked to music artists. If you put some things on the blockchain, you might not need the record label. You might be able to make moves in a way in which we can all share in your concerts, your benefits. And now it's not a 360 deal. It's a 1-to-1 deal. It's a 100-to-1 deal where we're all, actively investing in our person and even in their catalog. I see so many artists sell their catalog to a company. I don't know what's going to do with it, but they actually could sell it using the blockchain to individuals, and we all share in those benefits while they still have some ownership on that smart contract. So there's so many ways in which we can have, once again, transparency, security, accountability, immutability. We need that in the community as a community who has been outside of the rooms. Blockchain brings us into the rooms, brings us into the conversations, brings us into the agreements. So it is transformative. It is a way for us to see things and have receipts. So I do think that in the world that we will build, we'll be able to use it in a way that benefits us all and not just individuals.
Yeah, since we're coming up on time, just one last question before we open it up to additional questions. But we kind of alluded to this, but what if you could get out your crystal ball? And I kind of hate asking this question because I remember 10 years ago I was in a room talking about crypto, about where we'd be, and we're not there now. But if you could, look 10 years from now, where do you think we'll be with crypto from a regulatory perspective or societal? I'll let you answer how you wish.
So I think that, overall, we're still very early in blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think there's still a lot more adoption and application across various use cases that still hasn't happened yet, right? So I think there's still a lot of opportunity, not just for the global market, but for our community, right? So I do think that. I think that, me personally, I believe that Bitcoin still has a lot of leg room from a pricing standpoint. Because there's no intrinsic value, and this is very important to understand. There's no intrinsic value for most cryptocurrencies, right? The market moves on fear and greed. But as more miners, as more of the Bitcoin is mined, there's less available. And so that scarcity drives up price. Institutional adoption, which has happened and is continuing to happen, will continue to drive up pricing, right? So, which then leads me to my final point, which is touching on something that you said, which is the knowledge of investing, right? So my rule is very simple. I don't invest in anything that I don't have a logical, well-researched, rational reason that I think will grow in a measurable way and hit my targeted rate of return over 10 years. I don't worry about short-term volatility. I'm a fundamental investor, right? If I can't make it make sense and I think I'm not going to hit my targeted rate of return in 10 years, I just simply don't invest. If I don't understand it and I can't figure it out, I'm not investing. And that is a baseline kind of core constitution that I have that has seemed to work out really well for me thus far, so, Yeah.
I think our generations are still a little bit of Luddites. We've been outside. We know what outside looks like. But some of the younger generations, they're tablet kids. They are Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft kids. And so digital assets are not something that we look at like, what is that? They love digital assets. Charlie, your kids be spending money on digital assets. They on their Roblox. They be needing no Roblox. So you know, Robux. I don't even know how to say it. I don't got kids. Those are cryptocurrency in an idea of kids. So if you're exposed to that, you know, the metaverse, crash burn, didn't like it. But if I live my life in Minecraft, I understand that I get it. So a future generation is gonna be adapted to all of this, blockchain, AI, etc. So they will be more comfortable with it. They will have more value into it. I never thought that Pokemon cards would cost this much. But you know, the digital assets that are versions of Pokemon cards, they will scale. And so, you know, you will have future generations being, you know, grown into this digital environment. And so we have to make sure that there are guardrails, but we have to make sure that we're at least on the ground floor for some of it so that we can, you know, make money as a community, not as an individual, but as a collective. So I do think that, you know, awareness, education, and really keeping your eyes out to what's next is important. And these people in the room, you're doing the thing you need to do because you're here listening to the people who know some of the things that may come to pass.
Yeah, I know we have a good amount of Gen Z in here too. Those of us who are millennials and older, you know, we have a separation there. But Tiffany, I'll let you answer.
Has anyone in this room owned like a standalone GPS or navigation system?
Man.
That's what crypto is going to be in 10 years. So right now, like we no longer like have standalone systems, but everything we use is powered by navigation. Yeah. Uber Eats, Uber, like it's automatically in your car, like right, all of these things, like you can find out where your friends are, where your kids are, like right. And so I think the blockchain part of crypto in particular is going to power everything behind the scenes. And even your transactions are going to be faster, cheaper, and better, all powered by blockchain and crypto. But it's no longer going to be a focal part of the conversation. It's going to be integrated and just, from a technological perspective, make everything better.
Blockchain and crypto have made the world so much smaller that
Colonization.
Yeah. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point to end on too. Because even, I mean, I'm not a true AI expert, but even like we've been using forms of AI before we even called it that.
Yeah.
It's just that we weren't seeing it that way. And I think similarly with like the amount of use cases that will be invisible to us, but just a part of our society and lives. And hopefully the regulatory piece will get figured out.
It will get done.
Yeah.
Hopefully this year we'll get done.
Yeah, AI is
Okay.
logic. AI is if, then, and or statements. So I don't want anybody like, well, what is AI? We've been doing it.
Yeah.
It's just got better.
Okay. Yeah. Questions. Yeah. I think let's get. I know someone who hasn't. Let's get in the brown sweater. Sorry, I don't know your name.
Normally in law school they teach you like, okay, when you sue everybody. But when something is built on the blockchain and there's these layers or essentially a veil behind, how do you know who you go after, or how do you know who you hold accountable? And secondly, my second question would be, if it's a contract, there's always predatory language you can use to cheat people out of money or property. What's the way to, I guess, be aware of that and take precautions for that as a consumer or as a legal practitioner?
So I'll take that one. So I'm a certified cryptocurrency forensic auditor, right? So when you're looking at going after someone, right, there's a forensic audit that typically has to happen on the entire chain ledger, transactions, et cetera, break it down. Like because of KYC and AML, it's not as anonymous as when I first got in. It was very, very much a different world then, right? But
Acronyms, explain what those are.
KYC and AML? Okay, know your client. I'm sorry, forgive me. Know your client and anti-money laundering. So, you know, when you go open a bank account, right, you got to give them your ID, you got to give them your social security number, you got to do like a liveness check if you did it online, etc., right? That's called KYC and AML. Know your client and anti-money laundering. They want to know who you are, and they want to make sure that you're not on some watch list, you know, or something that's going to be an outside risk for the institution's capital, relationships, organization, etc., right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say, and that comes out of payments regulation and know your customer.
For sure. So that's KYC and AML, right? And so because of that, If you were to engage in litigation and try to go after someone, the first thing that has to happen is we have to figure out and pinpoint exactly who you're going after. And the great thing about forensic audits in the blockchain is oftentimes we can uncover other bad actors in the chain that were part of the transaction that you may not even know existed, and forensic audits allow that to happen. So that's the first step, typically.
It all goes down to the immutability. You did it. It's
Right.
there. You can't hide it. It's on the blockchain.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's a question. Yeah.
My question is about your point about actual utility in the Black community. What's your stance on self-custody of digital assets, given that the technological literacy rate in Black communities is lagging? And do you think there's a self-custody solution that adequately protects users that aren't as tech savvy?
Hardware wallets. It's called cold storage.
Yeah.
Cold storage is the best way to go, in my opinion, right? It's the most safest, right? Because if I put my money, let's say, in an exchange, that exchange could crash, right? And then I don't have access to, because see, there are different wallet types. Let's just start there, right? I think that's probably a good way to start. So you have hot wallets, right? So hot wallets are wallets that are part of your exchange. So they manage the keys and all of that, right? And so if something were to happen to that exchange and they were to crash, go down, disappear overnight, right? You don't have access to that currency anymore because you have no way, you don't have the keys. You don't control your private keys. And so as a result of that, we call them seed phrases in cryptocurrency. Seed phrases are 12 words that if I were to lose access to my wallet, I could put these 12 words in and I could recover my wallet. And by recovering my wallet, I would recover all of my access to my digital assets, right? With hot wallets, you don't control the keys. With cold wallets, you do. Like I have my seed phrases, right? So if something were to happen and I lose, well, funny enough, I can't find my ledger right now. I can go to Best Buy and go, yeah, it's somewhere in my house. But I can go to Best Buy right now, buy a new ledger, right? Put my seed phrases in, and we back to normal again. We good, right? So that's that.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take on that. So I think if you're not technologically savvy, I don't think you need to be self-custodying your assets. And so like how you solve for like the potential risk is that you engage with a regulated entity. Now, like we're kind of talked about how there's kind of a change in the regulatory perspective. Now there's been, I don't know, there's like 17 entities applying to be OCC, applying to be banks, right? So there's like regulated custodians that can hold your crypto assets. And like he was talking about the seed phrases and all of that stuff. Like there's all of these stories about how people lost their seed phrases and the money is gone forever. Yeah. Like I lost my seed phrase. I found it like recently, but it's like I don't know what I had for lunch yesterday. Like or like I don't know what time zone I'm in half the time. Like right. So like I think if you're not tech savvy, just don't do it. But I wouldn't say don't self-custody your assets and like give them to some risky place or even or even give them to an entity that's actually going to like rehypothecate or use your assets. Yeah. Just put them with a custodian whose job is to safekeep your assets, like a bank or a trust, and they're there. And even if they do go bankrupt, because your assets are marked as customer assets, they're going to be separate from the bankruptcy, and you'll get them back.
They're going to set up the lunch. So for our people online, come back at about 12:30, and we're going to have our award presentation. We'll be back online. So you got time to take a break.